Welcome to another episode of the This Is Marketing podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about social media marketing. Now, social media marketing is definitely a very complicated, time-intensive, possibly expensive venture to go on when it comes to your marketing strategy, but it doesn't have to be. And it depends really a lot on many factors, starting with the business, what your business is, what your business model is, who your audience is, what the product or services you're selling, and how you're going to connect all of these things together. Think of the ecosystem we're putting our place into with our brand. And social media lends itself so well to so many different avenues, but it changes so quickly. It's ever evolving, moving 100 miles an hour. So in this episode, we're really going to talk about what social media marketing is, how to choose the right platform, what to post first, frequency versus quality, starting a simple content calendar, very, very important, key metrics to track, and consistency and community. Let's jump right into it. What is social media marketing? Well, it's not just posting. It's about connecting with your audience where they already spend their time. And we know we all spend a lot of time on social media. And if you don't, you shouldn't be listening to this podcast, because if you're a marketer and you're not on social media, it's time to get on social media. You have to be in that space. You have to understand how the platforms work. You have to observe content. You have to look at the analytics on other people's content. Not that you could do a deep dive, but you could look at basic things, likes, shares, comments. What content is highly engaged with? And if it's industry related, and by that I mean in the relevant industry that you work within, then you can tap into those ideas and see like, hey, this piece of content works really well for this company. But caution, because that company probably spent a lot of time getting to that point in time where they're actually able to share a piece of content that has some kind of shareability, interaction, engagement, maybe even it goes viral. And we'll talk a little bit about viral content in here, but it is not a pipe dream in the sense that everyone can just go in and no one's going to get anywhere with getting a viral piece of content. But I think viral has many different definitions when it comes to social media and the markets and everything that we talk about. So let's start by just understanding this. Social media is a channel, not a strategy. So even though we hear it a lot, what's your social media strategy? What's your social media, what is the thing that you do, or what's your practices? What's best practices? You got to treat social media for what it is. Each platform is different. Each platform represents a channel. And because the platforms are so different and nuanced, yeah, they're all apps, and that's fine. But each app, each channel has different features to it. And because it has different features, it attracts different audiences. If you can remember back, and if you've ever used different platforms, back when video was kind of finding its way, there's a lot of reasons why video didn't catch on quickly. First of all, size and space of things. So to create a video, to store it on a device, to save it somewhere, transferability of it, editing of it, it wasn't really lending itself to just go out and do videos and then be able to do something with them. You had to bring it back to an editor. You had to go and edit that video and do all kind of different things. Well, now things are much different. Space is cheap. There's a lot of it to go around. Computers are much faster, so the processing speed's there, which means the video became much quicker and easier to use. Previously, YouTube was opened up for people to upload whatever size files they wanted, those kind of things. And it was dependent on how many subscribers you had, the growth of your channel. And it's still true to this day with YouTube and many of these platforms, Facebook and Instagram. As you grow a business channel, you unlock different features of it. On YouTube, when I hit 10,000 subscribers, I opened a bunch of other features that I was able to utilize. When I got monetized, when I hit certain pinnacle kind of strategies that they were hoping that I was doing, not just me, but everybody, then they unlock pieces of it. And that's great, because then I can go into that channel and start to do new things, going live, being able to upload 10 minutes worth or beyond worth of video. Those kind of things are kind of at breaking points and I get it. They don't want everyone to go in and upload 16 hours worth of video footage and it's just nonsense. They want you to have a strategy behind what you do. So understanding that early video were things like Vine, where it was very short video clips and it was kind of in spurts. And even when Twitter had video on it, there were limitations to how much you can upload. And there's still some of that on certain channels. So think about the channel, think about the message. What are you trying to say in social media? What are you trying to hope to accomplish as well? Both are vitally important to the success of your strategy. So let's talk about that, choosing the right platform. You don't need to be everywhere. That's number one. Go where your audience is, or at least where you think your audience is. And a good place to start is looking internally at yourself. What's your age? What's the demographic that you would fit into? What's maybe the economics of the way you live? And where do you interact with? If you have children, what are they doing? If you have siblings or older, parents, things like that, what do they do and what platforms do they spend time on? And then as you connect that to a business that you're working for or marketing, how are you making that connection between the channel to the audience to the thing that you're trying to say and sell? And the nice thing to do is to create a persona. Start with a persona of who your ideal customer is. And maybe it's multiples. And we'll talk about personas over and over and over again, because there's never an instance on anything. I do this even with presentations. When I'm creating a presentation about maybe a marketing report or an idea, whatever it is, I think about the audience first. Am I giving this to administrators, to colleagues? Am I going to a board? Who am I talking to? What do they already know? What do I want them to know? And how am I going to convey that by the materials I put together? Translate that to social media. Where's the audience? What platform are they on? What does the platform want us to provide? And what does the audience want from us? So the idea that you don't need to be everywhere, go where your audience is very true. Think about that over and over as you build a strategy and you start to develop things. And what I always try to tell clients when I'm meeting with them for the first time, and this is really a good practice because a lot of them get excited about meeting with marketing teams or marketing people and saying, all right, we want to do X, Y, Z. Here's what we want to invest. Here's where we want to be. Here's what we think we could grow ourselves to. And we want to be on social media. We want to be everywhere on everything. My response is always, well, where do you have success now? Where do you see the most interaction? And if they're on different channels, they'll be able to tell me that right away. And I always come back and say, well, let's focus on just that channel then. Let's grow that audience, maximize its potential, and then let's spread out from there and see what we can kind of filter in and bring in with other channels. Going back to the idea of what is it we're asking them to do or what are we wanting them to do, by looking at channels in this kind of lens, you can focus on that call to action. We know the audience is there. We know they've already engaged with our platform. We want to get them across to being a conversion or doing what we want them to. Now, the same principle is going to be true when you're just getting on social media. Let's say you're starting with a business that has no presence at all. You still want to try to figure out, just based on who they think their customer is, where to go. And you could use a lot of different statistical things out there. You could go look at Statistica to see what's the use of different social channels. They'll give you demographic information. That way, if you come back and say our audience is 50-year-old females and above, we know we could go look at some data from the platforms themselves to say, hey, here's our audience that's on these platforms. And then we can start to make that connection. So let's say that with that instance, maybe it's all Instagram and Facebook, which I would think to be mostly true. Okay, we're going to focus then on that 50-year-old woman and above. We're going to do it on Facebook, which is going to give us direct access into Instagram. And we're going to build our strategy from there, but we're going to treat those two channels, even though they're owned by the same company, as two different entities. So other examples of this is when you think of like LinkedIn, it's business to business first, right? I'm a business. I want to get my business and what I do out there. I'm going to use LinkedIn for that strategy. Maybe we're looking to grow our business, so we're going to go on there and try to find individuals that we can hire. Instagram is definitely a visual first. It's definitely for visual first brands. It's a great way to put visuals out there in a simplified way. TikTok's Gen Z all the way. Definitely diversifying and growing. We know that social media ages up. So young people get on a platform first. They're more adept to trying things and figuring it out as they go. And then as they get on that platform and they begin to talk about it and it hits the media cycles and it kind of goes into these other generations, they follow. And then typically that younger generation will be like, okay, this is all muddied up now. We're going to jump to a new, different platform. So we've seen that time and time again over the years where all social media ages up. And that does kind of create this diversity across channels that you can pay attention to and say, okay, well, maybe the audience is definitely heavy on Facebook, but we know that there's some significance there to Instagram. So what I would do is really think about when I'm planning my strategies and investing time and funds into it, I'm going to split it, the demographic and the use of the channels, just like I would based on the population. So if 80% of the population is using Facebook that I'm targeting and 20's on, let's say, Instagram, then I'm going to give an 80-20 rule. 80% of the content I'm going to create every week is going to be for Facebook. 20% is going to be for the other. And as they grow and shift, I'm going to adjust everything accordingly. The reason I say to do that, and the reason we practice doing that, is because it takes a lot of time and effort to put together a post. It's not something you could just go snap a photo, write something out, and hit post. Well, you can do that, but you're definitely going to want to have more of a strategy around that. You can't do that every day. You should really start to think about, and if you're using analytics, think about what it is you know you're trying to accomplish and how well it's working for you. When you can do that, now your strategy makes sense. Now you have kind of the investment of time and the investment of people, and not to mention the funds that are going to have to go behind all of this to actually focus on that. Now, we're getting on a social channel, right? So we're kind of playing in between two scenarios here. One is I'm brought in to work with a business and take over what they have or to expand on what they have. The other side of that is starting out with a new business. And I say at this point, you could really still kind of treat your strategy the same. If you come in and you take over social media and that they have a really good thing going, they're just, maybe they want to move on from the company they're working with or whatever, then take as much as you can from what you can see in the analytics and start to continue building on that. Now, if you're starting out for the first time, patience is the number one thing. It's going to be a very slow burn. You're going to have to start pretty simply, but the new rule for that, in my mind, would be give value. So as you start a social channel, it's going to, obviously these platforms are going to try to connect with your contacts, have you share it out to friends and family. That's great to get a little jump start. But what you have to understand about social channels and the algorithms and how things actually work is your audience will identify itself to the platform. Your audience will identify itself to the algorithm. And when that happens, if you have a bunch of friends and family that are never going to use your product or your service, and they become your fans and followers, then you've just skewed the algorithm and you've just skewed your audience. So for me, it's always a little bit of a battle because you want to start to get likes and show at least the channel or the platform that you're on that, hey, there's something here. We're building something. We're starting out. And those first couple likes and things are going to help with that. And you can use that audience. If you're using it in that way, I would say go for it. Share it with your friends and family. Tell them to like, tell them to comment. Kind of trick the algorithm into thinking there's a lot of engagement going on and your content needs to be put out there more. And that's really what the name of the game becomes, is the quality of the content and the engagement of the content. And when that happens within a platform, they want to not only reward your channel, but they're kind of rewarding the audience by saying, hey, you saw this piece of content, you interacted with it, you liked it, so now we're going to give you more of that. And we might give you more from this company, we might give you more from that company. But that's ultimately what and how these algorithms work. It's how these channels work. So as you're thinking of that and you're thinking of your first post, think about the values. So what can we do? Well, if we're a service-based company or even a product-based company, then the product actually helps with something. Give tips. Show how it works. Give frequently asked questions about the product or service, or maybe it's the problem itself. If your product solves or your service solves a problem, talk about the problem. Talk about how it gets solved. Talk about how an individual can solve it themselves without using your product or service. The reason I say to do that is because you're giving away free value. And it's not to say that you can replace your product, because your product came to be because there's something there. But if you give that value, you build trust. And that's the most important and probably the hardest thing to build from a brand standpoint is trust with the consumer. So by creating these value-added pieces of content, you're giving them a reason to trust you. You're giving them a reason to follow you. You're giving them a reason to come back. So do this. Do more of this kind of story content where it shares why we started our company, what problem we're solving, how this product or service that we offer solves the problem for you, and just run with it. Use that to start to build out your first couple weeks of content. Yeah, you can filter in other things. You could do videos and photos. I would highly recommend you do more visuals over text. Now, if you're building a blog, you're definitely going to want to have those be part of what it is you do with your blog strategy, but you can reshare that content out. And the nice thing about when you're putting together these pieces of content, as you start to use the platform, you'll start to think and understand a lot more what your audience desires out of your content. And what I mean by desires is it's not necessarily a photo. It's what the photo is. What's it of? How does it interacting with them? Does the photo tell a story without you writing a word? Always very important to me. Can a video do the same thing? Visually, can you hit mute on a video and understand what's going on? When you think of social media and how people navigate social media, whether it's during the day or at night, if they're at work or they're at home and maybe they're sitting on the couch and they want to be quiet about it, they lower their volume. So you want to make sure that you can accomplish what you want without audio. Now, audio is vital. It's very important. And I spend a lot of time worrying about how audio sounds on videos that I'm editing. I think it's just as important for you to think about that visual side of it. So as you start with something as simple as tips, frequently asked questions, or about us, engage even at that secondary level with the media that you put out. And pay attention to the analytics. Again, if you see videos performing better than photo, lean into that strategy and vice versa. It's also going to be important as you start out to balance personal and promotional content. So as we add value, there is promotion to that, right? We want to build trust. So there's a promotional side. But I think it's also very important to think about your brand voice, to personalize it, to humanize a brand. And you do that with people. You do that with testimonials. You do that with videos of you talking. And you could be just a talking head giving an update. That's fine. But get a frequency and quality of that down so that it makes sense to your end user and they come back wanting more. It helps the algorithm. It's going to help your channel, and it's going to help you start to grow. When I say a slow burn, if you don't have a piece of content that goes absolutely viral crazy, and that results in likes, follows, whatever, building your audience almost overnight, so to speak. And it does happen. So don't get me wrong. Your strategy can achieve that. And everything that I'm about to say kind of becomes secondary to the people that don't have the viral piece of content. But it's going to be a slow burn. It could take months. If it's YouTube and you're trying to get going with a channel and monetized and those kind of things, it could take 1 to 2 years to get done. So just be patient with the process. That's the most important thing. Be patient not only with the process and how fast that growth might move, but also be patient with how much content you develop and how much you put out there. I myself face this all the time where I create maybe a calendar of content. Maybe I do a whole week's worth of blogs and podcasts and photos and this and that I'm going to share across different channels. You start to get a little bit excited, like, oh, that piece of content is it. I nailed it here. I really want to get it out to my audience. Stick to your strategy. Let it be timed. Let it be in a sequence. Let it funnel out when it funnels out. Now, if there's something going on related in a news cycle or things like that, of course, move it up. But don't get ahead of yourself. Don't create 10 pieces of content that get excited and think, I'm going to put all 10 of these out. They're going to get indexed. I'm going to start getting traffic because of it. Just be patient. Do a calendar. Stick to the schedule. Stick to whatever kind of criteria you build around this, and just really focus on being true to that. So I mentioned frequency and quality, two very important things, and especially with channel to channel. I'm not going to sit here and run down what channels want what kind of content. You know, TikTok wants you to post multiple times a day. It could be about anything. There doesn't have to be a niche. YouTube wants you to post as frequently as you can, but they want your content to be niche and relevant to the audience it's serving. That's going to be very dependent on what you are. If you think it's of something like Mr. Beast, and if you don't know who Mr. Beast is, he's one of the number one top YouTubers out there, just absolutely exploded. And if you followed his story and you still follow what he's doing, he just started with consistency. He started putting out content that seemed like it was more for him than anybody else. And he was authentic. He was true. He was honest. He wasn't flashy about it. It wasn't polished. It just was Mr. Beast. And people fell in love with him. And people fell in love with that content. As he grew, obviously the quality and the production, everything has changed. But the point of what he does is still there. It's entertainment. So if you have a channel that's for entertainment, you can definitely cast a wider net on what you think your audience is and what content you could produce. But if you do something like this podcast itself is very narrow. It's very focused. It's business oriented, but it's really for the marketer. So if you think of businesses, you think of CFOs and workers and these things, but then you start thinking of marketers. We're a much smaller audience. And then you have marketers that are even interested in listening to a podcast to get advice. Now, I probably excluded half of all marketers. I'm also probably focused on more of the people that are trying to find their way, maybe 5 years out of college or less. Maybe that's the audience that I'm going. So I took an idea of a very broad kind of base, and now I'm narrowing it down. That's true for YouTube. And when you find that niche and you start to engage with them, even if the audience is small, they could be mighty. If you have 100,000 people that are all in marketing and they're all marketers. They're the audience that I'm looking at going towards. That's 100,000 people that I have the opportunity to engage with every time I put one of these out. Now, comparatively, yeah, there's billions of people on this planet, but I'll take the 100,000 sized audience any day. In fact, I'll take 1,000 people that are very engaged with my content versus 10,000 people that don't engage with it but like it. So that kind of depth of content is much more valuable than the width of it. Too often, and I see this with my own children where, oh, did you see that video? It's viral, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, how many other viral videos does that channel have? Well, none. That's just one video. I go, okay, well, width versus depth. We want to have depth to the channel. We want to have depth to our content. And your width of that will grow intentionally because you're doing a strategy. So frequency and quality, you're going to want to make sure you have some really consistent, simple scheduling. It could be 2 to 3 times a week. But that's better than saying, hey, I got these 10 posts. I need to get them all out. Ding, 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 ding. So spread out the content. Leave the algorithm coming back. Leave the search engines coming back. Leave your audience coming back. But also set the expectation of the consistency. I know certain channels that I follow put out content every Sunday night at 6 o'clock. I know every Sunday a video has come out. I may not go there right at 6 p.m. to watch it, but I know Monday morning and I know Tuesday that there should have been a new video that came out on Friday or on Sunday. So I will go back and I'll look for it. And then that creates that kind of dance that you do between being a publisher of content and a consumer of content. You have that expectations. It's no different than what you do in TV shows. If you watch any kind of live TV or sports, you know those happen at certain times or on the weekends or whatever it is. Take that strategy and just consider it as you build your own platform. These things you don't have to reinvent anything. And there's not anything that I'm going to say here that hasn't been done before by other people and done probably 10 times better than I can do it, but I'm still going to talk about it. So that consistency in posting, very, very important. Quality is kind of a multifaceted thing. It means clear visuals. It means a strong message. It means a clear call to action for your audience. Make sure that the quality of what the piece of content is. I'd hate to put out a piece of content and at the end of the day have no call to action. My call to action on these podcasts is for you to really listen. But I leave something at the end of this that says make sure you subscribe. And also, if you have any questions or comments, hit me up on Twitter at Ross Marone. You can find me there. You can message me. You can talk to me. So when you think about things like that, that's that call to action. There's a consistency to it. Start there, frequency, quality, build it out, be willing to adjust it. You may notice that, hey, I get interaction every single piece of content I put out. Then hell, put more content out and put it out more frequently. That's just saying that you have achieved something in the algorithm that's making it come back to you and share your content to that audience. Simplifying frequency and quality also runs into simplifying the content calendar and how you do that strategy. It's very important to think about calendaring things because it's easy to get overwhelmed with social media. As soon as you get in there and you put together the first piece of content, you realize all the production that goes into it, you're going to take a step back and say, okay, I now have 100 other more pieces of content to do. And maybe they took you an hour. So now you have 100 hours worth of content. You know things are going to go wrong. And if you're doing all of the production, because generally speaking, a lot of us end up dealing with very small teams, sometimes a team of one, where you have to go out and do everything. So you have to be the photographer, you have to be the editor, the copywriter, the digital media programmer, the person that writes all the editing and messaging for it, the person that schedules out social media. And honestly, as terrifying as that may sound to some of you that just have kind of the niche of what you do in marketing, you gain so much experience doing all of it. I would always encourage people, do it all. If you're just starting out and you're working for a business doing one thing, but you really have a desire to do something else, start a business and do it for one company. Do it for 2 companies. Do it for 3. Learn from that. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of back and forth, a lot of learning and failure. But at the end of the day, you're going to end up kind of where I'm at, 20 years of experience doing everything. From editing, the shooting, to copywriting, all of it. But I've been able to work with really good people in that time too. Not only clients and in my real job where I work every day, working with people there to do it, but working with real experts. You know, I had a time in my life where I was working with a new photographer that started within our company, and he came off of working in newspapers. So he was really used to this quick and dirty model. Like, we have to go out and capture the story and get it back to press by the end of the day. So when he came to work for us at the university, the timeline and kind of time frame for him just got really slowed down because it wasn't this grind like the media is every day. We got to produce. It really slowed it down and said, okay, we could be more thoughtful on the content we're producing. But what I learned from him was just, I could not have found a book or a class or even a degree that would have covered everything that he gave me and the time that we spent working together, which ended up being about 6 to 7 years. And it was everything from lenses to how to shoot with the lens, how to understand shutter speed and framing and all these different things, color correcting, how to adjust photos in the edit, and how motion works in visuals. So those kind of things, and working with somebody like that and being willing to be a sponge is so valuable for your career. And I take those principles to today. I mean, how I shoot and edit things today, even though I'm at a much different level of what I do for the university still, what I still do for companies, I go back to all of that stuff I learned and I'm able to use it over and over and over again. So starting simply and absorbing as much information as you can is important. So getting into content calendaring, find some tools. And all you got to do is go do a quick Google search for, social media management tools, social media calendaring tools. You're going to get all kind of things. But if you're not willing to pay a service fee, which a lot of them are going to charge, and I highly recommend finding one that you like in a free trial and then investing in it. I would also say do as many free trials as you can, maybe 3 to 5. Find different platforms, read about them, see what the audiences are saying about them, read the reviews, and then jump into something that's probably going to work for you. If you don't want to do that, something as simple as Google Sheets or Excel can do a content calendar for you. It's just the idea that you put a date, you put the platform, what the content's going to be, and where it's located. And beyond that, it's also the content that you're going to write. So you could put the whole post within the sheet. That way that day you go, you grab the content, you grab where the image is at, you put it all together, you hit post, it's out there. Content calendaring doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to be hard. Neither do the platforms you're using. So if you get a platform that seems cumbersome, there's definitely better ones out there. So move on as soon as you can, because all you're going to do is add a layer of chaos to the chaos that it takes to be a social media manager. Themes really help. So if you're looking at calendaring and putting things out there and trying to build this frequency in your head of how this is going to work, you can dive into things. And a lot of, like if you use Facebook's Business Center or whatever the heck they call it, they have a calendaring thing built into that now. So you could actually schedule content, and you could schedule it between Facebook and Instagram, which is really nice. But they'll put little details on that calendar to say like, today is, National Bike Day. And then, actually today might actually be National Bike Day. But today's National Bike Day. And because of that, you can go out and post all about bikes today. And there's going to be relevancy in the market across the board because today's a nationally recognized day for bikes. So those kind of things are an easy way to jump into an audience and also have some calendaring to it. And it's a way to take a little bit of the creative away from you. So you can focus on like, yeah, we're going to play in all these, motivation Mondays and tip Tuesdays and throwback Thursdays, but we're also going to go to all the holidays and the holidays that aren't really holidays, and we're going to acknowledge all of them. It's great because it gives you a piece of content to use if you don't have something for that day. You could be creative, but you're also going to be getting into a trend that's taking place for that day. So there's going to be a lot of channels and a lot of people that are hashtagging, National Bike Day. You jump right into that with your content. You become just a little blip on the radar, and that's all you want to do in social media, be a blip on the radar. Not being there doesn't get you anything. Being there has potential to get you anything, viral, whatever. And as much as you can with that, also come in with batching content. So batching content means a couple different things, but for me, it's about batching out maybe a post. So if I have a story, let's say that I'm doing for a client, or a piece of content that has multiple different mediums to it. So we did a story where there's a written piece, there's an interview that we filmed that's video. We're going to do shorts out of that video. We're going to do a middle edit of it that's maybe 2 minutes. We're going to keep the long format there. And then we're going to have all this photography that goes along with it, with the interview, outside the interview. Maybe they're talking about something back somewhere else. We went and shot all that. Now we have all this content to kind of wrap our hands around and say, okay, we probably have 20 to 30 pieces of content here. Do we put it all out at once? Do we make a website that has the videos embedded, that has all the content that's written in a photo gallery? Well, no, we don't do that. What we do is we start to slice it up and we say, okay, we're going to introduce the story in this way. We're going to use this piece of supporting content for a different medium for them to engage with. And then down the road, we're going to start to refer to this piece of content that we put out by using this imagery. And the imagery is going to be all new, but it's all the same thing. So if I'm taking a photo or we're doing a photo shoot, I always think about what's the subject? What are we capturing in this moment? What's it look like? What's the background? What's the person look like? What are they wearing? And then maybe we move locations, and I want to be consider the same things. Does the outfit look exactly the same? The backgrounds change, but what is the consistent thing we're bringing over? And now we have 2 different locations, which means I have 2 different posts that I can do based on this. So now I have all this opportunity with content to go out and have multiple posts that I can batch out in my calendar. So I could say, okay, this is the timeline. We're going to use this piece of content for the next 2 weeks. We're going to spread it out and we're going to batch it out and calendar it out as that. And I'm going to spend the time to do that. And honestly, scheduling content takes a long time. It takes consistency. It takes making sure that you know where all your links are at, checking everything to make sure that the link you have in the blog actually goes to the blog and that the blog works. And then all the SEO and everything that goes with that. We're not talking about that today. That's how complicated this can be. So getting a good format together, getting a good practice together, finding the right software to use, the tools, everything is vital and important. And again, speaking from experience, you need to get into all of this to learn it. You need to actually do this stuff to start to figure out what your style is and how it works and how the channels work, how the platforms work, how the audience engages with them. And guess what? If you're doing this as a freelancer, this industry is going to be completely different than this industry. So what might work for healthcare may not work for education. So you have to be very considerate of that and know that a strategy that was a home run with one company may not be the same for the next. And there's 1,000 variables as to why. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Be patient. Again, patience is key throughout this social media talk. Let's talk about some of the key metrics you're going to want to focus on and you're going to want to track. Number 1, first and foremost, engagement. Your goal is always engagement on social media. That's how viral things happen. You want to look at likes, comments, reshares of your posting, whatever it is. Engagement's number 1. And really think about that over just likes. Likes are important. Likes show you that someone was there, but a like is like the lowest level insignificant action that somebody can take. It's mindless. It's almost as if the impression may interact with likes on my level of importance. Impressions are great to have, but they really don't count for anything. It counts in a brand because we talked about touch points. I've talked about that in one of my first 2 episodes. There's the touch points of a brand, which impressions count towards that. But liking it, the channel's going to treat a like in a little bit more of, let's say if you're putting KPIs together and you're giving them a hierarchy and saying, okay, what's the level of importance of this? An impression is going to be down at the bottom. A like's going to be a little bit higher, but it's still going to be lower than a conversion. A conversion is going to be top. But what happens in between there? A comment takes more effort than a like. And that's the way I like to think of it. If I get comments, those took more effort from the audience, which means they took the time to read what I put out or see what I put out, maybe like it, maybe not. Maybe they're there to complain, but they're still doing something. So any comment I treat as if it's a compliment, and I go back and I address it. If it's a mean compliment, then I go back and I give a remedy to it. I always try to take it behind a closed door, offline as quickly as possible. Like send me a direct message. We'll talk about it there. Or we address it in public because it's a public thing. It needs to be addressed publicly sometimes. But treat comments very important. So I always go in, I respond to all comments. And I think that's a vital thing to do in any social strategy when you're just starting out. So really think about that over time. The other thing is to watch your reach, your saves, profile clicks. Those show interest. So just like a like or a comment and the different level of that, if you get into somebody who saves something like a Pinterest, they saved one of your pins, that's important. And that's very important to that platform. If they've clicked within your profile and they've interacted and subscribed to you, also very important. I would definitely put that above a like. I'd probably put a subscription above a comment because they're telling you, that's the signal. They're telling you, I want more of what you have to offer. So treat that very important. And when you see the content that is generating that, analyze the heck out of it. Dissect it. What content did we put out? What was the timing of it? What was the post we did right before? What's the audience look like that engage with this? Is it different than our overall audience? Let's figure out why this worked and why other pieces aren't. When you figure that piece of it out, keep leaning into it. Lean into it. Just dig in, dig in, dig in. And as I've already said, growth takes time. So you really have to make sure that when you're thinking about the timing of all of this, that you're allowing growth to happen naturally. There was a time in at least my career when, these platforms opened up ads. So Facebook started offering advertising, Twitter and as many marketers as I knew went on and started buying likes. That's what we said. Hey, if the measure of success in social media, and honestly at this time it's definitely not as complicated as it is today. The measure of it was likes. If you had followers and likes on your content, that was gold. That's what you wanted. So what we did is we went out and said, hey, we're going to spend the money to just get the audience. We're going to buy the audience. And then we started doing that. And what it really did was said, okay, we're putting kind of, there's abuse of power in all of this. So if I'm trying to get somebody to like a product, people were starting to skew the truth about what the product was or the service was. And I think the channel saw that, because if I was on Facebook and everywhere I looked, I was following these channels that just weren't giving, answering their brand promise to me, then I would look at the channel and start to say, well, Facebook's really just full of junk. Have you heard that before? Have you been on this platform? It's just full of nothing now. Pay attention around political cycles. You get a lot of that. But that really, I think, adjusted what the platforms thought. And they said, you know what? We really got to get this right. We have to change the algorithm to look for the engagement over the likes. And you really saw a drastic turn of events with our channels where the amount of likes you had didn't matter, because the algorithm wasn't serving all of your likes. So if I had 10,000 subscribers, they weren't seeing all the content. The algorithm was now saying, we're only going to show, yeah, you got 10,000 people, great. We're only going to show this content to the ones that are engaging with it. And then we're going to get it into more eyes that like you. And we'll even put it in some of the organic stuff that's outside of your liked audience. So when that started to happen, now we all had to change our strategy. We couldn't just buy likes anymore and go back and report on that. We had to show engagement. And now it's all about engagement. Google just recently, in the year 2025 here, came out and said, listen, this is all about intent and engagement. We want to know what the audience member is wanting to do before they get to our platform. And when they get there, we're only going to deliver what we know they want. So intent is now the new measure, and we're going to focus solely on that. So that now has shifted gears for all of us. And with the introduction of AI, we really have to be thinking about the quality of the content and how to create intent that might not be there. Our audience might be buying our product and service in store, but they're not engaging with us online. So we have to create new intent for them, which really goes back to the beginning of this, which is focusing on the audience and knowing what they want and expect out of you before you do anything, taking the time to build the persona. That way we can start to really deliver on intent, which is the name of the game. And that kind of goes into the last section of what I was going to talk about here, was consistency and community. So replying to every comment very early on in your channel's health is very important. Replying to comments 10 years from now is going to be very important. It gives yourself not only that engagement and builds trust, but it also develops a brand voice for you. If you don't know what brand voices are, again, do a search. Use AI to help explain it to you, but then go out and start to explore some of the brands. If you look at the Wendy's and the Taco Bell, go look at their social media. Look how well they do it in identifying their brand voice. Same with Arby's. You ever see an Arby's commercial? You definitely know that voice. You definitely know the tagline. I don't even have to say it, but they have the meats. And that is part of their brand and who they are. So when you develop that style, you really have an opportunity to explode it and develop a brand that has a voice that's engaged with, that's fun to engage with. And then the user's intent may not be that every time they go to Wendy's social media, they're there to buy a burger. They're there to be entertained. So now you kind of diversified what the product offering is in a social world that has nothing to do with their base product that they sell in the store. What it does, though, is keep the eyeballs there. And that way, when you do give value through the entertainment side of it, you can sell them burgers all day because you can fit that content in. And that's all we're talking about. Give value, create structure, know the intent, and answer on it. Hashtags are important across all channels, but be intentional with the hashtags. As intentional as you are with content, be intentional with hashtags. It's a great way for discoverability to happen. People like to do search terms. So if you're searching for something on a platform, think about how a hashtag that you put onto that piece of content might get returned as a result as such. So it's intentionality. It's not just for decoration. It's not just to fill up a post and make it look busy. Also very important in social media with this interactivity is the ability to ask questions. So a lot of our content is passive. We're telling you something. We're giving you value. We're showing you how to do something. We're explaining what it is we do. Sometimes the best pieces of content that bring people in is when you ask them a question. Hey, there's this problem. What do you think about it? How are you going to solve it? How would you solve this problem? What do you think about X? And you could be very relative to things going on in the media, in the news, whatever the cycle is or whatever's happening in your industry or environment. Use that as maybe there's a gigantic change, in higher education with all of the different things that are going on at the federal level and even in the state levels, there's so many changes going on. A great theme right now for anyone in higher education or even in education in general is to ask the questions of what do you think about all of this stuff that's going on, whether you think it's nonsense or not. What do you think? And what do you think the implications are? Give them a voice. You already have the platform for them to be able to discuss it, but just give them the voice and give them the opportunity. And now you've created additional engagement on top of everything else you've done. When you do that, that's where some of this viral content can come from. Viral content is usually, in my opinion, professional expert opinion, if you will, is viral content is very highly emotionally charged. And it's emotionally connected to the audience that's viewing it. So whether it's something that's very, very funny, it's an emotional piece. If it's something that's sad, shocking, whatever, it's emotional. And when it becomes emotional, it becomes shareable. So as you're building content, you're thinking through, okay, how can we get viral? And maybe viral for you means 100 likes. Maybe it means 100 million likes. It's the same premise. You know the audience, you know what you're trying to achieve, and you know what you want to do to get there. But use that piece of content as you're planning it, you're discussing it, and you're actually going out and producing it. Really think about what it would take for it to go viral. And what about this is shareable? Viral content is shareable. A piece of content that has nothing worth telling somebody else about is not a viral piece of content. So go back and look at all these pieces. And now don't get me wrong, there's so much content out there now, and there's so many ways to get your stuff seen. YouTube may pick a piece of content out that just has really good engagement. It may not be shareable, but it has really good engagement because the content itself is valuable, and they might push that to their front page. And if you hit that front page with your piece of content, well, hold the heck on, because you're about to take off. And that's going to be true in TikTok and Instagram, Twitter, wherever you can go where they start to move your content more towards an audience versus away from it. That's where you have the best opportunity to go viral. So really pay attention to those kind of pieces of content. Make notes about it. If you saw something that was viral, whether it was a polished video or an amateur video, write down why you think it was viral in that moment. Was it the timing of it? Was it the content, the subject matter? Or was it the production? What was it that made that piece of content go viral? And then take it back to the shop and try to replicate it. That is so important to do. And it doesn't mean it's going to happen. These algorithms aren't a one size fits all, or it's a secret sauce. I mean, there's definitely secret sauce to it, but there's not a formula you can follow to get every piece of content out there. And a lot of the people out there that are going to tell you otherwise and say opposite of that are probably the ones that already had this happen. They had a piece of content go viral. They doubled down on the audience. They doubled down on the content. They had something immediately ready to go. They built a huge audience. And yeah, now every piece of content thereafter looks like it's viral. So it's not about any one or two things that make it happen. It's about the whole. It's making up the whole in the idea and understanding how it all works and how you're going to make it work for you. That pretty much covers everything that I was here to talk about on this subject. But at the end of the day, your social media challenges and strategy, well, your strategy is challenging, we should say. Way to go the whole podcast and then fumble your words at the end, Ross. Your social strategy is going to be very challenging. It's going to be very complicated, but you have to be willing to be patient, number one. And number two, willing to try things and find that audience and then get into them. 3, develop content that is so unignorable that people have to engage with it. It has to be engaging, and make sure there's intent behind what you're asking the audience to do and what you're expecting them to do, and just make that connection. Build a calendar, make your life easy, and take the time to, again, lastly and foremost, be patient all the way around this. You got to be patient with social media. One thing I didn't say, and it just hit me in my face like a ton of bricks. Don't let the powers that be, and this is a hard ask, but don't let the powers that be tell you what to do when it comes to social media. And what I mean by that is you may develop a piece of content that you have all of the data and intent behind and engagement behind, and you know why you're doing it. You know why you put this piece of content together. But you go and you show a director or you show a colleague, and they come back and they give you not the response you were looking for. Don't take that as law. You're the one spending the time on this. You're the one that understands the industry. They may understand the product, but they may not understand social media. So if someone comes back and says, we're not doing that, why would we do that piece of content? That is XYZ. It doesn't make any sense. Take the time to explain all the research you did. Take the time to show them the examples. Take the time to make the case for why you're doing what you did and what you're going to do. And when you figure that out and you learn how to do that, you build trust with that person. And you can get them to buy into more of the content that you're willing to try. Social media content that works is usually the stuff that's new and that's being tried out for the first time. So be willing to take those risks. Be patient with the process of what you're doing. As always, if you like this podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be trying to do these weekly. So if you're here in a year from now, I don't know, hopefully there's a whole year's worth of weekly content that I put out. So hit that subscribe button. If you like what you heard here, share it with somebody. If you have any questions, you could find me on Twitter at Ross Marone. And you might be able to find me at This Is Marketing Podcast too. I think I actually changed my Twitter handle recently. Again, content's important. So me keeping track of all the things I'm changing as I'm getting this going is very important, but you'll find me out there. Look up Ross Marone. You'll find me. Thanks for listening. I'm rambling now. This has been the This Is Marketing Podcast. Hopefully we talk to you next week. We'll see you next time.